Hi, YouTube community. It's Hannah. Today I have a talk about the why don't women prefer nice guys and why do they prefer assholes, old chestnut that I know everyone's been roasting this forever and everyone's probably reached their own personal conclusions on this. But I recently encountered, and I've thought about this kind of stuff a lot. So this would go into the sort of like man-woman relational stuff, like playlist here. Um, I've certainly thought about like man-woman relational dynamics a lot. And there's a video from an account called Ho Math that I encountered fairly recently. And I can't remember the name of the video. It's got like something about a sword. Okay. And again, the account is called Ho Math, and I'm going to link it in the description. And this video, I'm going to say for me, it wins the internet. There's so much good stuff out there. That it's almost tough to rank it, but like in terms of being massively personally helpful and taking all the sort of like amorphous conclusions and half conclusions and like otherwise like unrelated thoughts and frustrations and things that I've experienced and things that I've experienced that I understand and things that I've experienced that I don't understand. This video is gold. And it's like the most nutrient dense video I've ever seen in my life. Like this guy just like lays out so much that is so important and just like cuts through the chatter in a way that was like mind blowing, like blew my hair back. And I've been thinking about it ever since. And so the discussion that I'm hoping to offer today is to kind of like take something that he established in the Ho Math video about the sword and kind of like extrapolate out on that a little bit. Purely for my own enjoyment because it's just so interesting. But again, going back to the kind of like original burr under everybody's saddle of why do women prefer assholes? They say that they want a nice guy and then they go for this guy, you know? So what the Ho Math guy does, and his account being called Ho Math, like that does not offend me at all. Is he's essentially saying that like women need a force projector and they would prefer a nice guy. So there's guys who can, by whatever definition, and I'm going to talk about how that's kind of changed over time, but sort of not. There's guys who are like more or less able to be force projectors. And I literally mean just like, it could be physical, it could be psychological, it could be financial, it could be like, that could look lots of different ways, but force projection, to have a preference and to project that preference onto their ambient circumstances to make things go that way, to make things go the way that they want them to go. That could look like defending their physical safety. That could look like defending the interests of their loved ones. That could look like a lot of different things. But when I say force projection, it's like everything in that category. So all men are going to be like more or less force projectors. And also all men are going to be more or less on a spectrum of like nice or not nice. Okay. So the Ho Math guy does a way better job in his videos than I do because he does all kinds of like editing and like creates things and like visual aids and stuff like that. In fact, you never see his face. I'm really curious what that guy's face looks like, but all you're seeing are these kind of visual aids that he's created and he's like pointing to them and stuff. So he creates kind of a quadrant, you know? So there's like sort of like 4 spots that a man could be on this. He could be high in force projection and nice, or he could be high in force projection and not nice, or he could be low in force projection and nice, or he could be low in force projection and not nice. Like those are the 4 quadrants, right? So I do my best when I kind of like put things into analogies. I mean, on the face of it, like that made sense to me. I mean, what he's trying to do in this video is to kind of debunk this one spectrum that we've been talking about, which is like guys are either assholes or they're nice guys. They're either assholes or they're nice guys. Like we've dropped out a whole other spectrum, like we've dropped out a whole dimension of like what it is that women are actually primarily responding to. So when you drop out that whole other spectrum and then you look at women's behavior and we say we want nice guys and then we don't go for nice guys, then it doesn't make sense, right? So he's like frustrated with this, and he's kind of like cracked the code, you know, and he's trying to like debunk this and like show the full actual, like, there's like two spectrums here that they interrelate, and like women, not consciously, but in terms of our like sexual and emotional responsiveness, we're absolutely tracking on these two different spectrums, right? So here's the analogy that I would set up for you that I think is a brilliant analogy. I think it's brilliant. So we kind of all understand, I think, that our physical bodies and our evolution, our bodies got set up to like metabolize food and to deal with nutrition a long time ago. And like for thousands of years, that was true. We were hunter-gatherers. And it's only very recently, because we have this like thin veneer of civilization on top of the otherwise like howling wilderness that has represented our experience from an evolutionary perspective, and all of that is still hardwired into our brains. Only recently do we have this experience where our relationship to food is that we go to the grocery store and we buy food. And so imagine, because I do think that we all kind of get like macros, for instance, like there's protein, there's carbs, and there's fat. And like we need those things. We need those things to function. And if we don't have enough of each of those things, then we are not going to function. So imagine a world where we convince ourselves that because we now exist on this like paper thin veneer of civilization on top of the otherwise like howling wilderness that actually we arose within, you know, on a biological level, that now just everything's changed. Like our bodies have adapted to this new environment. And so what you do is you go to the grocery store and you just buy the thing that is in the brightest packaging, or you buy the thing that has the best name recognition because it was marketed to you the hardest. And you're like, that's what it's about now. That's what nutrition is about now. And then you don't get the results that you would prefer, because that would be an insane way to eat, right? And we all know that. Like, that wouldn't go well. You have to go to the grocery store with some sort of sense of like what human bodies need, and like find products that like fit those kinds of categories. And then also, yeah, we are modern people, and it is really fun to have chips and salsa and stuff like that. So it's not like you can't do that thing too. It's not like you can't have some Cheetos, but it's like you gotta, this is a prerequisite, you know, the macros. So that's my analogy. I think that what we're doing when we ask angrily, as the like everybody's like been so butthurt about this, like women say they want nice guys, but they always go for assholes. Like, why is that? And it's because that would be as if we said, well, all of the like the circumstances and the incentive landscape that was true, and like not just true, but like life or death for women in different ways for so long, you know, for so long. Okay, so now we live in a thin veneer of civilization, so somehow like sexually and emotionally for women that's not gonna be true. We can just like get rid of all that. And so now what it's about is like we're all in a society, so we all need to be nice. And so that's, you know, and like hopefully like pull down some money too or whatever, you know, so like women should go for that. And it's true, like we don't, I mean, whether it's like now, you know, in modern times or like back in old times, like we don't like men being mean to us. I mean, there's some like little caveats there that have to do with like in the bedroom, like certain kinds of like domination kinds of things. But generally, like we don't want to be with men who are mean to us. And we don't want to be with men who force project against us, because we're smaller, we're weaker, we're less coordinated. And we, whether this is literal or figurative, you know, in whatever the actual circumstances might be, and if this is like in the old days or and this is in the thin veneer, we're the weaker sex. We're the weaker sex. So a man, like finding a man who can like force project really well, which this is the part of the conversation that's been like completely dropped out until Mr. Whole Math guy thankfully brought it back. It's like we would rather be with a guy. Here's basically like the decode. Like Just like we need macros, but we like to have chips and salsa, like we need nutrition because of our thousands of years old, like evolutionary setup in our bodies, but we like treats at the grocery store. As women, sexually and emotionally, we need a man who can force project, but we like a nice guy. If between, let's say there's like two dudes, you know, this is like a total hypothetical here, but there's like two dudes who are like badass force projectors, and like one is nice to us and one is not. One directs his force projection against other like threats as well, but also against us. Like we don't, that's not safe. Like we're looking for safety, even when we don't know that that's what we're looking for, because our conversation and dialogue has, like, because of our thin veneer civilization in many places, not everywhere, has like moved us off of the topic of like physical safety as women, sort of, you know, sort of. So yeah, we do prefer nice guys. So if he can be a force projector and a nice guy, we're going to go for him over a force projector who's like a loose cannon and he's force projecting out, he's force projecting back at us. Like, no, that's fucking scary. That's scary, you know? But a guy who's not nice or nice, who isn't a force projector, the way that our like fucking medulla oblongata or pussy or whatever, wherever you want to sort of like host this kind of thing, this reaction, and it makes total sense that if you like look back far enough, the way that we look at that is like there's going to be a man or men or circumstances or situations out there that are force projectors. He's low in the force projection department, so there's going to be invariably bigger, stronger force projectors, and they're going to go through him like tissue paper. And he's the one standing between us and the other force projectors out there, us and the threats, you know? So is he nice? Okay, you know, then you get into simp territory, and like, because we don't understand like how our own reactions are working, and none of us are ever taught to like think through this now. And in fact, we're like, you know, kind of like indoctrinated, like, to make it extra confusing and extra hard to figure out. You get into simp territory, you know, where it's like a nice guy who's not a strong force projector. And I'm not saying that like nice guys who are force projectors wouldn't want to sort of like shower gifts on their beloved, right? But simp territory is where you have a weak force projector and he's a nice guy, and so he's going to try to compensate or like overcome for his lack of force projection. Because if he was a strong force projector and a nice guy, he wouldn't be trying to like buy us drinks and like hope that we get drunk enough to like trip and fall on his dick and like all the things that like simps do, you know, just like hang out like for years on the back burner, like hoping that one day we like are in a weird mood and like have sex with him, or like whatever it is that simps do, you know. Like if he was a strong force projector and you're his chosen and beloved and he wants to shower gifts on you, I mean, that's a different thing. That's not simping, you know. Like trying to essentially like bypass like what's happening for women in our brains, whether or not we know it, and try to compensate with niceness and with gifts and with trips and with attention, you know. She would already be in your bed, you know what I mean? She would already be in your bed. So I think one of the reasons, and if he's, you know, and if he's like a weak force projector and he's not a nice guy, then, you know, like he's not simping, you know. He might be a woman hater, and I'm not saying that only women haters are weak force projectors. I think there's lots of reasons for men to have moved themselves over into those camps. I mean, I guess I use the term like woman hater, like sort of really generally, but men going their own way or just kind of like feeling, there's lots of reasons. There's lots of valid reasons for men to feel like disenfranchised with the project of trying to cooperate with women in marriage, you know, in all kinds of ways. So by no means am I like looking down my nose at them, but it's, I mean, certainly if he's like a weak force projector and he's not a nice guy in this kind of conversation, this context that we're having, then like he's not going to be simping and he's not going to be getting chicks. Okay. So, yeah. super, super powerful reminder that for women, I mean, to the extent that our civilization is kind of like having a hard time because of woke, because we live in a matrix that's designed to make us like fat and sick and woke and gay and dumb and retarded and low T and poor and under muscled and everything. Um, to completely just sort of like gloss over the fact that, I mean, you can call it what you want, but women have existed on this planet as essentially like a form of prey animal. Like we're our biological imperative, whether this is something that we do or not, whether we choose to do or not. And it's great to have civilizations where we can actually like choose into things or choose out of them. That's the goal for everybody. But our uh, physicality is set up to be able to like reproduce and to be able to hopefully survive the process of childbirth, of not just like mammals do this all the time and it's no big deal, and then the female mammal will just like stash her litter somewhere and go out and hunt because she's just as badass as the male. He doesn't need to stick around because she's female mammals, in the mammal kingdom, they're just as coordinated. They're just as, they might not be as big, but they're like fast, like they can hunt, they can do things, you know what I mean? And they don't have to care for this litter for 18 years that's like entirely helpless, or however long, like they're up and running, so the human mammal experiment is completely different. Such it's so different, and really only we have anything in common with this with dolphins, because dolphins are the other mammal on the planet that's like evolved for intelligence as much as we have. But dolphins give birth in the water, so they don't have to like walk, they don't have to have like hips and legs and like have made this sort of compromise that the human female skeleton has, because humans walk. That's what we do. We can walk out. We can outwalk any mammal on this planet, so we're set up to walk. But for us, for human females, we're also set up to hopefully survive the process of childbirth of these like incredibly big brained, because as a race, we specialize for that, to have the biggest like brains on the planet, and to be the apex mammal, like the apex like entity on this planet. That's why we can build cities and start wars and do all the things that we do, so for human females to be able to like have a skeleton where we can like walk and run, but to also be able to continue this experiment of having the biggest, smartest brained babies ever that are like helpless for so long, our musculoskeletal setup has had to like make major adaptations separate from the male human skeleton, which it's not in the animal kingdom. Otherwise, it's not that much different. You know what I mean? And that's why we're the weaker sex. We are. And like, we live in a time where even just saying that like offends people, but we are smaller and we are weaker and we are less coordinated, because that's not what we're optimized for. So the interesting thing about all of this is that, when you really look at it through this just like common sense ass, like historical biological lens, it's like the males are set up to be stronger, faster, more coordinated force projectors on the planet. And we're set up to deal with this like really like stressful, complicated, dangerous, often deadly childbirth thing that happens, so that we can all keep being the apex predator on the planet. And so that interrelationship, like that long-term partnership between human men and women, you just don't find that in the mammal kingdom, because they don't need it. They mate, and then the male pieces out because he's not needed. Like, she can do the stuff that she needs to do. That's not the case. We have to have like a long-term agreement where all of her physical and emotional resources are going towards these big brain babies that are so helpless for so long, much more helpless than any other equivalent in the animal kingdom, and for longer. And so all of her resources need to be directed to that, and like all of his resources need to be directed to her for this whole thing to work, for us to just have subsisted at all, like as a species, so that like, reasonably long-term connection between a male and a female is such that our psychological and emotional adaptations have to support that as well, because if they didn't, then this whole project would have already not worked, you know? So, something I say sometimes when I'm like drinking or being flippant is that like all women are crazy. They're just like more or less crazy. Sorry, that's like probably really offensive. And I totally include myself in this category, but it's not, we're not actually crazy. It's just kind of like everything is sort of like measured and quantified and defined and like, discussed like in contrast to the sort of like masculine world of dealing with things tangibly and the thin veneer of civilization and the workforce and like doing your taxes and all the dumb shit that we do. You know what I mean? We aren't crazy. What we are is set up to be the caretakers of young, very helpless beings for an extremely long time, and to like completely obsessively, neurotically even notice all kinds of things that it turns out are really important in order to, you know, like be the stewards for this process that is really important, needs to happen. And that's what we're good at. And then when you take that whole setup, muscles, skeleton, brains, hormones, everything, and you take, and I'm not suggesting some kind of world where we're like human incubators or anything. I'm just like decoding this. Like when you take that optimization, which is like so fucking badass, it's like so badass what we can do, and then you try to apply it to working for HR or whatever, the thin veneer, then, you know, it's not always great. It's not always easy for everybody. We're not designed for any of this to be convenient for men, or even for it to be convenient for ourselves, or to even make sense to anyone. It's designed for this process, for the human race to subsist, you know, and perpetuate. So when I say, sorry, going back to my point, like when I say that like we like to forget this, you know, just like we like to go to the grocery store and buy the shiniest shit and not remember that we're like set up to need to deal with macros in a certain way, that women have existed on this planet almost like prey animals, to the extent that we need to be set up to partner ourselves. We need some kind of long-term partnership if all this other stuff is going to happen. And we need that person, we need that man to not be tissue paper that any other man or any other threat can get through, in the sense of a threat that's going to like kill us or carry us off somewhere we don't want to be, or even in kind of like a sexy sense, you know, like I mean, I've had this many times where it's kind of like I'm with a guy and he's my date, and that just happened, what, you know, that's happening, and I can just and we'll both encounter another man who I didn't have the vocabulary for this for most of my life, and the fact that I do now is only thanks to home math. But we'll encounter a man who's a stronger force projector, which just, you know, I think the previous way that we sort of grappled with this was like, well, he's an alpha male and you're a beta male or whatever, and like there's some ways that kind of thing applies, you know, but it's like you can just, as a woman, you can just feel that like that man can take my attention off of you, and there's like nothing that you can do about it, because he's a stronger force projector, as it turns out, and there's something in my like brain and body that's like responding to that. So I'm talking about both in a sort of threatening type of way, but also in a like relationship, I guess, threatening kind of way. You know, the stronger for us, it's just a mandate. It's just a mandate that like our lives aren't going to go very well, and we're not going to be very turned on, and we're not going to be very likely to like put out sex or like want to put out sex, you know, which we're very sexual and like we want to do that. It's not that we have to be like conned into it or something. Like we want what we want, you know, but it's been really confusing for us to all figure out what it is that we want. Like we want as strong of a force projector as we can find who isn't force projecting back against us, you know, like you need to point that cannon outward. Like I'm the thing you're supposed to be protecting, you know, like, so yeah, so that's interesting, right? Then here's a whole nother element. We as humans have taken all like nature, red in tooth and claw, you know, is a meritocracy in the sense that survival of the fittest, or as my dad calls it, survival of the survivors, like whatever's like the weird thing that like each sort of like species in its habitat and niche like needs to do to be able to like survive long enough to reproduce and all of that, like that involves really tangible like physical things every day. I mean, the birds, it sounds like I'm in Hawaii and it sounds so nice and the birds are singing, and it's like you got to remember, like every single animal is fighting for its next meal, like however it does that, like it's trying to get enough calories every day, it's trying to like stay warm enough or cool enough, or like literally all the things that it needs. So for the human experiment, we've like abstracted this meritocracy of survival into this financial economic environment, and that's now where we don't, for the most part, we don't like wake up every day and have to like fight for our lives and like go like hunting and gathering and stuff like that to like get enough subsistence for the day. Like we got to go to work, you know, and then we got to do all the things associated with that. So that in itself wouldn't even be that bad, honestly. It's an abstraction, and I think that as big brain humans on the planet doing the big brain thing, like that's right, and that's appropriate for us to like lift our circumstances up out of. I mean, that's what men are here to do, to be force projectors and to perpetuate the project of like civilization and to protect women and children. Like that's men, you know. So yeah, that would be appropriate and that would be fine. But where all the crazy gets in is that then we based all of that on money, you know, on like currency exchange, because that's the symbol of like what we would be doing otherwise with like force projection or defensiveness or whatever, or skill, you know, like harvesting or finding calories or whatever, building shelters. We have abstracted that onto the level of currency, which makes sense, right? Sounds good. Then we broke the money. And when I say we, I think you know who I'm talking about, but they broke the money to make it so that the money itself, that, you know, we have to use this form of currency as a stand-in and abstraction from our otherwise meritocracy like related activities that we would be involved in. Then they broke the money to like literally reward the worst possible characteristics, you know, and to punish the best possible characteristics. It's like cooked into the money. And I know if this doesn't hit you right because you haven't been down the rabbit hole far enough with like what the incredible effects that like sound money has, like in a system with actually sound money instead of broken money, then, you know, just take that and put it on the shelf. But that's what I'm saying. We have this like nature red in tooth and claw situation, then we abstract it into civilization and we use currency as a way to sort of symbolize, you know, like force projection, like in this abstraction, and then we break the money so that now we have women who this is all what I'm trying to do is like help, like if there's men out there like not getting laid, that's what I'm trying to help you understand why you're not getting laid. We have men who are they have like successfully made this transition and they are like incredible force projectors in the Thin Veneer of Civilization project, who still aren't getting laid. They're going home and they're getting frozen. I guarantee 100% that's true. So women's brains, pussies, whatever you want to call it, in some ways and in some ways not, have like made this like leap, just like men's brains and dicks in some ways not. So like really what's going on is like women, like it's more likely that like a wealthy man, aka a man who has, you know, managed to sort of like symbolically force project in this like abstracted project, but who isn't necessarily like a strong force projector otherwise, it's likely that he's not going to have a problem, you know, securing relationships with women, because that's women, you know, now we're all, thanks to the Rockefeller Foundation, and we all have to enter the workforce and we all have to like fight for our lives, like economically, like men and women, you know, thanks to feminism and all of that. We're between a rock and a hard spot. You know what I mean? We are. So, finding a man that you really want to fuck and that you really want to have sex with and you have a lot of chemistry with, who's also nice, is sometimes not the closest alligator to the boat for women, and like that stability piece, because another really primary driving motivation and appetite for women is to procreate and have children. Not all women, but if they want to do that, are their chances better with like the nice guy who's not necessarily such a great force projector, except he is economically, which is sort of still not what we would prefer. That's they're not writing romance novels about those guys unless it's, I mean, they're, you know, maybe he's a billionaire but he's also like got a six pack or whatever, you know. We got all this stuff kind of twisted up, but it's like if she, you know, she has like a limited window of time, and if she really wants to have kids and be a mother and start a family, then she needs to like really think about this, you know. And if that means that like she does her part and he does his part, and then it kind of becomes like a loveless marriage. I think, I don't know, I can't know, but I think that there's a lot of loveless marriages out there because of what's happening to all of us as this whole like drift occurs, and the ultimate confusion about like what it is that kind of like works, you know, and like a total lack of like mentorship for men, young men, from other men to even, I mean, men don't even know that they're supposed to be force projectors. In fact, they're like taught that they're not supposed to, and they're taught to like tamp that down, you know, and that's what they're supposed to do in the project of civilization right now. And then they go on and experience frustration because it's like, just because you were told you shouldn't do that doesn't mean that that's what women are going to respond to, you know. So now we just got like crazy shit going on with people misinterpreting everything all the time, and still like but the fact is, I mean, like, yeah, like I said, back to my analogy, like we all love to eat chips and salsa and like watch Netflix and stuff like that, but like that's nice, it's a luxury. But if you are literally starving to death because you have not received like the appropriate nutrition, like the baseline nutrition that a human needs, can that make you happy? No, it can't. You're going to be kind of in dire straits. So it's all been very confusing for everyone already, but then especially with the additional like the abstraction into civilization, and then breaking the money, and then making that the incentive landscape that everybody has to respond to, which if we could all just turn off our bodies and be like, okay, that's the thing now, then at least that would be clear cut. But it's not, you know, it's not. We're not very attracted to a man who we don't feel like he could protect us in the event of what? In the event of literally anything. Because in our sort of like body brains, like anything could happen, because we're the planet's like premier prey animal. You know what I mean? And I have so many other thoughts about it, you know, but I didn't want to make it too long. I just wanted to sort of like leave it right there. And I'm gonna, like I said, I'm gonna link this guy's brilliant video. He goes on and he like talks about a whole bunch of other stuff, which is incredibly rewarding. I feel like Homath's video should be like mandatory viewing for like all men and all women, you know. But anyway, I'm gonna leave it there. I hope that was of interest to you. All right, talk to you later. Bye.